Tonight we're going somewhere few ever get to visit. Beneath the golden ceilings and polished floors, below the silken robes and jeweled crowns, into the dust-covered corners of royal life. You're not a noble, you're not a knight, you're not even a tradesman. Congratulations, you've just woken up as a servant in an ancient palace, where everything is exquisite except your pay, your bed, and your freedom. I'm the Candlelight Historian, and this is history as it was lived, unforgiving, unfiltered, and brutally real. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy these videos. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, relax, take a deep breath, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's still dark when your eyes open, if they ever fully close at all. The chill in the air is a cruel little thing. Not quite a breeze, more like the memory of one licking at your face like an old enemy. Around you, the other servants are still lumps beneath their blankets, a tangle of elbows and snores and bad breath. No one speaking, no one dares. Talking before sunrise earns you a glare from old Tomas, and maybe a warning from the steward, again. Your sleeping area, if we can call it that, is a long stone room with low ceilings and walls that sweat when it rains. There's straw on the ground, barely thick enough to separate you from the cold bones of the floor. You have a blanket, if you're lucky, and you've trained yourself to curl just right so your toes stay inside it. Today, one toe didn't make it. It's now a tiny ice sculpture. You don't stretch, you don't yawn, you just move, quietly. The first sound of the day is your own bones protesting as you roll up from your pallet. Knees pop like old wood. Shoulders feel like they were borrowed from someone twice your age. You're 17, by the way, which, in servant years, is basically middle-aged. The air tastes of soot and sleep and damp wool. Somewhere above, a bell will ring soon. But not yet. This is the worst part, the waiting. You're already awake, but the palace hasn't given you permission to be. So you sit, curled up, watching the faintest glow leak under the heavy wooden door. It's always a strange thing, knowing your day will be long before it's even started. Your body aches in advance. Your feet are already tired, just from being feet. A faint cough from the corner. Someone trying to be quiet. Someone failing. You glance up and see the familiar outline of Marin. He always wakes before the bell. Says he likes to prepare mentally. He mostly just stares into space, like someone who regrets every life choice. The walls hum with silence. Above you, nobles still dream in feather beds. Below them, you sit wrapped in a blanket that smells like cabbage and burnt tallow, waiting for the day to slap you across the face. And then, finally, the bell. One long, lazy groan from the tower. The kind that seems like it's also trying to wake up. It echoes through stone and bone, vibrating in your chest like a passive-aggressive yawn from God himself. No words are spoken. Everyone moves. You swing your legs out, brace yourself, and step onto the cold stones. It's always cold. Every single morning. If it were warm one day, you'd probably think you'd died. Your tunic is folded at the foot of your straw mat, still damp from yesterday's sweat. You pull it on anyway. You don't really have a choice. The fabric is scratchy, stained, and exactly one size too small. It hugs your ribs in the worst way and gives your armpits a hug they did not request. Shoes, optional. If you're lucky, you've still got both of yours. If not, well, the palace is big. Maybe you'll find someone else's. You stand up fully and catch a glimpse of yourself in the tarnished bit of polished bronze nailed to the wall. Hair flat, eyes tired. Expression, that of a person who has accepted their fate, filed a complaint in their mind, and had it ignored by the universe. You join the slow shuffle of half-awake figures making their way toward the far door. No talking, just the sound of feet dragging and a few sniffles. You pass by the steward's assistant on the way out. He's already got a quill in hand and that thin-lipped expression that says, "I'm not mad yet, but I want to be." You nod. He doesn't nod back. He never does. Outside the servants' quarters, the corridor is even colder. The stones beneath your feet are slick with condensation. The torches have long burned out, leaving only the faintest orange glow from wall sconces and the occasional flicker of moonlight through an arrow-slit window. The palace is asleep, but also somehow watching. The stone walls seem to lean in as you pass. The tapestries barely rustle, like they're holding their breath. You imagine the paintings blinking when no one's looking. You once heard that a servant went mad staring too long at the portrait of Lord Varron in the East Wing. But he also tried to eat bees, so you take it with a grain of salt. You reach a small alcove with a basin. Cold water, it's always cold. You splash your face. It doesn't wake you up, exactly. It just reminds you that comfort is a myth and that water, even when it looks harmless, can still hurt your feelings. You dry off with your sleeve, because what's a towel? Then you take a moment to press your palm to the stone wall. Cool, solid, unforgiving. Just like the job. It's time. The hearths won't light themselves, and the nobles will be expecting their rooms warm, their bread hot, and their lives easy. You take a deep breath and begin walking toward the great hall. The day has begun. Your footsteps whisper along the stone floor as you move through the corridor. Wrapped in the grey stillness of early morning, everything smells faintly of smoke and stone, like a fireplace that's been empty too long. The palace around you groans with quiet, wooden beams adjusting to the cold, distant echoes of rats doing whatever rats do at ungodly hours. You walk with care, not because you're afraid, but because these halls amplify every step like they're staging a one-person percussion concert. And the last thing you want is to wake someone important. Your clothes hang loose now that the air has really sunk in. Your tunic clings in the wrong places and flutters in all the others. Your belt's too tight, but you don't dare loosen it. You've seen belts slip at the wrong moment. You don't want to be remembered as the servant who tripped over his own trousers in front of Lady Carentia. Again, you round a corner, breath visible in the dim light. The air here smells older. Dust, wax, a trace of mildew. The corridor is lined with closed doors, noble bedrooms, probably. Each one an unknown world of velvet drapes, gold-plated mirrors, and feather mattresses thick enough to bury a small horse. Behind one of these doors, someone is snoring like a large, wealthy bear. Behind another, a lady probably sleeps with an eye mask dipped in rose water. You wouldn't know. You're not allowed in those rooms, unless summoned. And if you're summoned at this hour, it's rarely for anything good. The path down toward the lower hearths is long and narrow, lit by weak moonlight from arrow-slit windows and the occasional sputtering torch someone forgot to snuff. You pass by a tapestry on the wall depicting some heroic scene, a knight slaying a dragon, or a goose. It's hard to tell in the dark. You used to look at it every day as a kid, convinced that one day you'd grow up to be that knight. Now you know better. The knight probably had his own servant, and that servant probably lit fires, just like you. You take the stairs, down 2 at a time, not because you're in a rush, but because you've learned which steps creak. You reach a narrow wooden door at the base of the hall. The entrance to the lower servants' passage. It's warped, swollen from damp, and hates being opened before breakfast. You give it a nudge, then a gentle shove, and finally a kick that sends a small chunk of wall dust drifting lazily through the air. The door groans open like an old man getting up from a deep chair. Inside is darkness. It's the kind of darkness that feels like it has weight, like it's been stored here too long and settled into the corners. You strike a flint. One spark, then another. The third catches. The tiny flame flares in your little lantern and paints shadows on the stone walls. You exhale and whisper something to the spark. Not quite a thank you. More like a mutual understanding. Neither of you wanted to be up this early. You shuffle down a short hallway toward the main fireplace room. This is your job, first of the day. Light the hearths in the noble chambers, starting with the Queen's cousin's husband's favorite sitting room. Because heaven forbid he wakes up chilly. You reach the first hearth, a wide, stone-mouthed thing, with old coals still clinging to the memory of heat. You kneel down. Your knees hate you for this. You open the iron grate, check the ashes, and start layering tinder, kindling, logs. You whisper to the flame again. More encouragement than instruction. Then spark, glow, and smoke. It catches. It's not impressive. It's not beautiful. But it's fire. And fire means survival. For nobles, it means comfort. For you, it means you did your job. You work your way down the corridor, repeating the same process in each chamber. Clear out the ash, build a small pyramid of fuel, coax the spark. Your hands are dark with soot now, your knuckles scraped from bumping into too many stone corners in too little light. You stop noticing that years ago, by the fifth hearth, your back is aching and your mouth is dry. Your lantern flickers. A breeze sneaks under a door and makes the flame dance wildly for a moment. You shield it with your hand like it's a living thing, because it is. In one room, you almost trip over a sleeping hound curled in front of the unlit hearth. He lifts his head, looks at you, sighs, and goes back to sleep. Must be nice. You pause for a second in front of the last fireplace. This one's in a room you've never entered before. A guest chamber, probably. The bed is massive, larger than your entire family's cottage growing up. There's a fur throw at the foot of it, and a painting of someone terribly self-important glaring at you from the far wall. You light the hearth anyway, eyes on the flames, not the face, when the fires are burning in all the right places. You return the way you came. Your footsteps sound louder now, your heart beats slower. You did the thing you needed to do. You started the palace's day. The corridors are waking up. More footsteps echo behind and in front of you. Other servants begin emerging, blinking in the glow, muttering half-greetings. Someone yawns. Someone sneezes. Someone groans like their soul is leaving their body. The palace is stretching, groaning, rubbing its eyes. And you are already 10 steps into your second chore. The hallway bends left into a wider passageway, one you know better than the back of your own hand. Mostly because your hands are usually full of someone else's laundry and your brain has memorized every uneven stone in the floor from stepping on them barefoot. The stone here feels colder. It's always colder near the outer walls. The chill climbs up your ankles and into your knees like it's auditioning to be part of your skeleton. There are no windows, just high slits and torch brackets, most of them unlit. You carry your little lantern in front of you like a tiny shield, half hoping it'll scare away the cold. It doesn't. The cold here has tenure. These corridors are old, older than most people realize. Built during some ancestor's reign, one of the Quiet Kings, probably. the kind who didn't start wars or build cathedrals. Just liked very long hallways. Everything smells of damp stone, old wax, and faintly of cabbage. You're not sure why cabbage. No one cooks it this early. But there it is, lingering, like a ghost with bad breath. You pass a cracked wooden bench where someone once tried to nap between duties and got caught. They're still scrubbing latrines 3 years later. Lesson learned. The deeper you go, the less grand the palace feels. Here, the ceiling drops lower, the walls are rougher, and the tapestries are fewer. No gold thread, no painted bases, no echoing footsteps of nobles. Just you, and the silence that hangs in the air like laundry no one ever collected. You duck under an archway where the ceiling dips. If you forget to duck, it reminds you, painfully. There's still a dent in your forehead from last spring. You rub it instinctively as you pass. The palace has many such places. Narrow corners, uneven steps, low ceilings. It was not built for comfort. It was built to last. Unfortunately, so was your shift. Eventually, you reach the end of the passage, the servants' access to the great hall. Not the grand marble stairway the nobles use, of course. This is the back route. A stone door so perfectly balanced it looks like part of the wall. You press it open, and it swings with a quiet groan that somehow manages to sound judgmental. You step into a narrow side passage and follow it to the inner corridor that runs behind the main hall. This one, at least, is slightly warmer. A single torch flickers here, casting shadows like dancers along the wall. You walk slowly, careful not to brush the stone with your shoulders. It leaves soot on your clothes, and someone will shout about it later. As you near the hearth again, your hearth, you start to call it. You can already feel the warmth leaking out from under the door. The fire you built is doing its job. The stone around it is drinking in the heat like a man fresh from the desert. You don't go inside. Not yet. The noble occupants aren't awake, and you're not eager to risk stepping on a cousin, or worse, a nobleman's dog. Those things are more vicious than they look, and better fed than you. So instead, you slip further down the hallway, the central kitchen passage. Here, the corridors widen again, shifting from cold to warm, from silence to movement. You start hearing the kitchen before you reach it, clanks, thuds. The low murmur of voices beginning to rise, like dough left too close to the fire. The torches in this part of the palace are brighter, better maintained. The nobles like their food, prepared in warmth and light, even if they never see the places it's made. You pass by stacked barrels of wine, baskets of carrots, a pile of potatoes with suspicious bite marks, and 2 terrified kitchen boys who might have just broken a ladle, and are trying very hard to blend in with a sack of turnips. You give them a nod of solidarity. We've all been there. Just before reaching the kitchen, you pass the inner courtyard's arched opening. A narrow view of the sky hangs above you, pale blue with the faintest touch of pink. Morning is finally arriving. Not that it changes anything for you. You reach the back kitchen entrance and pause. There's a moment every morning where you stop just outside the kitchen and breathe in, deep and slow. The air here is thick with heat, smoke, herbs, and sweat. It hits your senses like a wet wool blanket, unpleasant, but familiar. It means you're alive, still moving, still part of the machine. You push the door open, and the chaos begins. Inside, it's alive, not metaphorically. The kitchen has a pulse. People swarm through narrow lanes between prep tables like bees in a panic. Steam hisses, knives clack, someone yells hot, and nearly burns their sleeve off on a pot of something that looks like stew, but smells like boiled regret. There's flour in the air, on the floor, in your hair within seconds of entering. A chicken escapes across the floor, chased by a barefoot girl wielding a wooden spoon like it owes her money. Welcome to the engine room of the palace. Someone shoves a bowl into your hands. Take this to the warming shelf. No explanation, no idea what it is. Just hot, heavy, and moving. You nod, you move, you place, you return. There's no time to speak, only gesture. No time to breathe, only move. The cooks bark orders like commanders in a war no one agreed to fight. Someone's kneading dough with the aggression of a person working through childhood trauma. Someone else is carving meat with the focus of a surgeon and the speed of a man late to lunch. You don't ask questions. You carry things. You fetch things. You try not to get trampled. At some point, someone thrusts a mug of something hot into your hands. Water boiled with lemon peel. Probably meant for someone else, but it ends up with you. You sip. It burns. But it helps. You sip again. You breathe. For a moment, you just stand still. Surrounded by smoke and shouting and sizzling fat, you feel strangely calm. This is the closest thing to routine you've ever had. This is the one place where no one cares about titles, bloodlines, or which ancestor conquered which province. Here, you are only as useful as your speed. And today, you are very useful. There's something hypnotic about fire, even when you're not allowed to enjoy it. The next hearth waits at the far end of the chamber, a massive, arched one, tall enough for a grown man to stand inside if he felt like getting singed. This is no ordinary room. It's one of the grand audience halls, used mostly for formal greetings and the occasional argument disguised as diplomacy. You're here now because someone with 4 titles and no patience has a breakfast meeting and doesn't want cold toes. You carry the bundle of kindling tucked under one arm and a small basket of coal in the other. The tools clink as you walk. You've learned to cradle them close. Too much noise, and you get a sideways glance from the steward. And a sideways glance from the steward usually turns into a week of emptying chamber pots. The hall is empty, but not quiet. The acoustics here are unforgiving. Every step echoes like you're tap dancing on a cathedral floor. You try to walk like a ghost, light on your feet, breath held. The banners on the walls flutter slightly in the breeze coming through. Some unseen crack in the stone, red, gold, and forest green. The royal colors faded with age and candle soot. You kneel in front of the cold hearth, setting your load down with practiced care. Your knees find the stone again. They're beginning to form a close relationship. You suspect your kneecaps now. Know the palace floor more intimately than they know each other. The ashes here are old, grey, dead. You scrape them out into the iron pan and begin laying the fire anew. Tinder first, then wood, then coal, then a prayer to any spirit that handles indoor temperatures. Your flint strikes again, spark, spark, flame, and there it is, a little light in the darkness. A small sun, trapped and caged, flickering behind iron bars. You feed it carefully, adjusting the logs like a sculptor, fine-tuning their masterpiece. The flames rise slowly, not too fast. You don't want the smoke to back up into the room. You learned that the hard way. No one forgets the day the Queen's personal advisor walked into a smoke cloud and screamed like he'd been hexed. With the fire set, you sit back on your heels and just watch. For 10 seconds, 15 maybe, and then movement behind you. A steward, of course. His boots echo before you see him, which gives you just enough time to stand up, grab your basket, and make it look like you were leaving anyway. He nods at the hearth, doesn't nod at you, and disappears. That's as close to praise as you're going to get today. You'll take it. You exit through a side corridor that leads toward the royal wing. Not into it, just near enough to pretend you've seen its splendor. Once, when you were 11, you snuck a peek inside the royal music chamber. There was a harp taller than your father. It glittered. You don't remember anything else. Just the glitter. Now you head to the next fire. You're the first one they send each day. You get the palace warm before anyone important has to touch the floor with their bare royal toes. It's not glamorous, but it keeps you moving. And moving is better than being assigned to laundry duty during a rainstorm. As you pass a small alcove, something catches your eye. It's a window. A real one, not an arrow slit. One of the few in the lower wings. You pause for a moment. There's no one else around. Outside, the sun is rising over the edge of the courtyard. The light creeps in slowly, brushing over cobblestones, catching in the frost on the grass. It's still early enough that everything looks clean, untouched. You allow yourself 3 slow breaths as the gold of morning slips across. The sky like a blessing no one bothered to notice. 3 breaths, that's your limit. Then the footsteps return. Another servant, carrying linens. She passes without a word, but you both share the same tiny nod, the kind of nod that says, "Are you still alive? Good. Let's keep it that way." You continue down the hall toward your last hearth. This one is in the library, of all places. A room filled with books so precious that even you, whose hands have touched chamber pots and raw poultry within the same hour, must wear gloves to light a fire in there. You grab the thin linen gloves from the hook beside the door and pull them on. They're too small. They're always too small. You flex your fingers and push the door open. The library smells like dust and leather. It's dark in here, but not empty. Always feels like someone is watching in the library. Not a person, just the books. Judging you, whispering in a language only librarians understand. You walk quietly down the aisle of ancient spines and crooked ladders. The fireplace is halfway down the east wall, flanked by 2 statues of men who look like they'd rather be anywhere else. One of them is missing a nose. No one knows why. Someone tried to blame the cat. The fire goes up faster here. Dry wood. Good draw. Someone probably bribed the librarian to keep it that way. You can't blame them. If you were a noble and could bribe your way into comfort, you'd probably have servants to do it for you too. The gloves make your hands sweat. You peel them off after the fire catches and toss them back on the hook. Your fingers are itchy, and you know that itch means another hour of scrubbing ahead. You leave the library and head back toward the kitchens. The fires are lit. The halls are warming. The nobles will rise soon, yawn, and comment on how comfortable the palace is. Not one of them will wonder who lit the fire, but you'll know. By the time you step back into the kitchen, the world has shifted from sleepy to frantic. The place has become its own little city, a city run by boiling pots, sharp knives, and people who yell your name without looking at you. The cooks are already arguing about salt. Someone's waving a leek in a threatening manner. 2 boys are skinning a rabbit, like they're trying not to cry. And there's flour on the ceiling. No one knows how it got there. No one asks. You squeeze between a meat barrel and a scullery maid to reach the corner hearth, the one closest to the ovens. It's always the warmest spot in the palace, in winter. You stand there for a moment just to remember what it's like to feel your fingertips. But not today. Today you're here to work. A tray of raw eggs slides past you. A basket of root vegetables nearly takes out your knee. Someone calls your name, sort of. It's more of a sound than a name, but you recognize it. You turn, and there's the head cook. He's short, wide, and looks like he's been carved from bread dough that was left too close to the fire. He gestures wildly with a ladle and shouts something about trenches. Wooden plates that need to be cleaned, dried, and stacked before the midday meal. You nod, you always nod. It's faster than explaining that you're already doing 3 other things. You're handed a stack of trenches. They're still greasy from last night. You wipe them off with a rag that smells like wet dog and burnt onions, then stack them on the sideboard like a tower of shame. There's no time for perfection, only speed, and the illusion of cleanliness. The cook doesn't thank you. Of course not. He's already yelling at someone else for chopping leeks like a blind rat with a stick. You move on. Now comes the bread. The palace's bread oven is a massive brick dome that radiates heat like a sun having a tantrum. Inside it, loaves swell and darken, watched over by a girl named Lisa, who speaks to dough like it's a nervous pet. You've seen her scold a batch of biscuits before. It worked. Today, she nods at you without a word and motions to the rising loaves on the prep table. You take over, brushing the tops with beaten egg, careful not to smudge the shape. They need to look nice. Nobles hate it when their bread looks poor. Makes them feel like commoners, apparently. Once brushed, the loaves go into the oven, one by one, using a long paddle that's seen better decades. You slide each one in like you're sending a letter into a fire, which, in a way, you are. A letter that says, "We're trying. Please don't complain when that's done." You return to the vegetables, carrots, beets, onions, peeled, sliced, and arranged into color-coded piles like offerings to a very picky god. Your hands move on autopilot now. You've peeled so many carrots in your life. You sometimes dream about them, not in a good way. Your fingers are red. Your back aches. You'd sit down, but there's nowhere to sit. Not for you. Not unless you want to be shouted at for being idle, which in this kitchen is a crime worse than theft. You steal a moment near the back wall to gulp down water from a ladle left in a bucket. It's warm. It tastes faintly of iron. You pretend it's fine. You've pretended worse. The kitchen bell rings, a sharp, high sound that cuts through the clatter like a thrown knife. First breakfast. The nobles eat in waves. Early risers first, then the family proper, then the favored guests, then the lesser guests, then the steward, who insists he doesn't care for luxuries, but always gets the crispiest bacon. You help load trays, toasted bread, glazed fruit, soft cheese wrapped in fig leaves. You're not allowed to taste any of it, but you carry it all like it's made of gold. Because to the people upstairs, it might as well be. The hallway outside the kitchen fills with other servants, quiet, nervous, tray-bearing creatures like you. No one speaks. You just file out in a line, like ducks heading for a lake of judgment. You deliver a tray to the western drawing room. A lady is already seated by the window, wearing something pink and expensive. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't need to. You're the background, the set dressing. You could be replaced by a cleverly folded curtain and no one would notice. You set the tray down gently. She says nothing. You back away like a ghost exiting a haunted house. And then, just before the door closes, you hear her mutter, finally. That's the closest you'll get to a review. Back in the kitchen, it's chaos again. The second breakfast is already underway. Someone dropped a tray of plums. Someone else is shouting about herbs. The cook slams his ladle on the table like a war drum. You keep moving. There's always something to do, always someone to serve. The palace doesn't sleep, and it certainly doesn't wait. By the time the last tray leaves the kitchen, your hands are trembling, not from fear, just from being hands. You wipe them on your apron. It used to be white. Now it's a kind of tragic beige. You exhale one deep breath. You survive the morning meal. It's not even midday. You'd think that after the frenzy of breakfast, you'd get a moment to breathe. Maybe even lean against a wall and pretend you were never born into this job. But no, that would be far too merciful. Because the moment the last plate leaves the kitchen, the next round of duties arrives like an angry parade. Cleaning, not the dignified sort, not a gentle wipe or an elegant sweep. This is the kind of cleaning that involves kneeling, scrubbing, lifting, hauling, and a fair amount of muttered curses you try to keep inside your head but don't always succeed. The main hall must be polished before midday court. Apparently, if the floor isn't gleaming enough to reflect someone's insecurities back at them, the whole room feels poor. That's what the steward said, word for word. And since he said it, now you're here, with a rag, a bucket, and a deep, spiritual sigh. You dip the rag into the water, which is already grey despite being fresh 5 minutes ago. You press it against the cold stone and begin, back and forth, back and forth. Your shoulders burn, your knees creak. Your fingers start to wrinkle from the cold. The hall is enormous. Vaulted ceilings, carved pillars. Windows with glass are so rare it's treated like treasure. You don't look up at the decorations anymore. You used to, when you were new. Back then, you stared at everything with awe. Now you mostly stare at dirt and think about the ways it gets in places it shouldn't, across the hall. Someone's already polishing the throne platform. That's a different team. You're not allowed near the throne, even when it's empty, especially when it's empty. There are rules for that, mostly made up on the spot, but enforced like divine law. You reach a stubborn stain and scrub it, like it personally insulted your ancestors. It doesn't budge, of course not. It's probably a wine spill from last week's feast, or blood, or wine pretending to be blood. Hard to say in this place. After 5 minutes of heroic effort and some choice words whispered into the floor, the stain finally gives in. You sit back for half a second and stretch your spine until it clicks like a badly made chair. Sweet relief, brief regret. Then you move on. More rags, more water, more awkward angles. At one point, your sleeve gets soaked up to the elbow, and you pretend not to care. That's easier than admitting your arm now smells like fermented dishwater. A few servants pass through the hall while you work. Most of them ignore you. One nods, one steps over your bucket without saying a word. That's palace etiquette in a nutshell. Avoid eye contact, move quickly, and pretend no one else is miserable. At one point, you hear footsteps echoing from the far corridor. Sharp, quick, expensive. You glance up just in time to see a noblewoman glide past the entrance, her gown sweeping behind her like a living creature. She doesn't look your way, but you still freeze like a guilty statue, just in case. Once she's gone, you roll your eyes and get back to work. The spot she walked across suddenly seems filthier than the rest. Coincidence? Surely. Eventually, the hall is done. Not perfect. Nothing ever is, but passable. Gleaming in the right places. Deceptively clean in others. You pack up your bucket, wring out your rags, and try not to limp as you head toward the next task. Polishing, yes, again. This time, the brass, door handles, goblets, candlesticks, railings, even the decorative suit of armor in the vestibule that no one's entirely sure is empty. You carry a pouch of paste and a soft cloth. You dab, rub, buff, repeat, over and over. Your reflection begins to appear on every surface you touch, a faint, exhausted version of yourself, pale, sweaty, and slightly crooked from leaning. You polish like your life depends on it, which is fair, it kind of does. Once a noble noticed a tarnished candlestick, just one, the next day. The servant responsible was reassigned to work in the stables, shoveling things less metaphorical than injustice. So you polish and polish, and at one point you zone out so completely, you nearly walk straight into a wall. A small blessing comes when you're sent to deliver fresh linens to the guest quarters. It's a quiet task, just you, a bundle of folded sheets, and the chance to walk in silence for 5 whole minutes. The hallways there are quieter, warmer. They smell faintly of lavender, which is confusing and mildly insulting. No one tells you where the lavender is kept. It's apparently not for servant noses. You deliver the linens to a chambermaid with a tired smile and a matching bundle of stress in her arms. She nods, grateful. For once, someone's not yelling. You walk back slower than usual. It's petty, but you savor the extra seconds by the time you return to the main wing. The morning sun has fully climbed the sky. Golden light pours through high windows, catching in dust motes and bouncing off the marble. Like everything's made of honey, it would be beautiful if your back didn't feel like it had been trampled by an angry goat. You pass by the kitchens on your way through. The smell of roasting meat fills the air. Your stomach growls loud enough to embarrass itself. You press a hand to it like you're trying to reason with a spoiled child. Lunch is hours away, but there's always hope of a crust. A scrap of a crust. Maybe someone drops a biscuit. You head off to the next task, whatever it is, wherever it is. You stopped asking an hour ago. All you know is your feet are still moving, and the palace still needs something, and that something is you. The bells begin again, not the great, booming ones from the tower. These are smaller, crueler, handbells shaken by noblemen's aides and noblewomen's attendants to summon more toast, more tea, more everything. Each ring echoes through the corridors like a reminder that comfort has a price, and you're the one paying it. You're already mid-step when the first bell rings. The steward intercepts you at the next corridor junction, holding a clipboard with the kind of expression usually reserved for tax collectors or particularly unpleasant fishmongers. "Drawing room," he says, not even looking up. Lady Aarons wants the windows open and the air less heavy. Figure it out. You nod. Of course you nod. And off you go. The drawing room is upstairs. 3 flights, uneven steps, and at least one stair that creaks so loud it could be charged with noise pollution. The corridor leading to it is lined with portraits of people who look mildly disappointed in you, despite having been dead for 200 years. You try not to take it personally. You push open the heavy oak door with your shoulder and step inside. The room is large. Too large. The kind of space that exists purely to impress visitors and make servants feel small. Sunlight pours in through tall windows, catching on golden trim and polished wood. There are chairs no one sits in, books no one reads, and a harp in the corner that probably costs more than your yearly bread ration. Lady Aarons is standing by the fireplace, fanning herself slowly with a folded bit of parchment. She's wearing a gown the color of boiled beetroot and an expression that suggests something smells faintly of disappointment. Possibly you. "Oh good," she says flatly. like someone finding a coin that wasn't the one they wanted. The air, she gestures vaguely. It's thick. You resist the urge to tell her that's how air works. Instead, you cross to the windows, unlatch the iron hooks, and pull them open. The breeze rolls in, cool, fresh, and carrying the distant smell of herbs from the lower gardens. She makes a sound halfway between a sigh and a complaint. "That's better," she mutters, waving you away with a single, elegant flick of the fingers. You bow, not too deep, just enough to say, "Yes, Your Majesty of minor inconveniences." Then you're gone, back out into the corridor. The next bell is already ringing. You find yourself in the eastern wing, carrying a tray of letters to be delivered across the palace. Sealed envelopes with wax stamps, smelling faintly of perfume or pipe smoke. You're not allowed to read them, obviously, but sometimes they crinkle in a way that suggests drama. One even hums slightly when you hold it. You choose not to question that one. As you pass the central stairwell, you nearly collide with a nobleman in bright yellow sleeves and the kind of hat that suggests he hasn't heard the word subtlety in his life. He sneers at you like you personally offended his ancestors. You apologize for existing, apparently. He says nothing, just keeps walking, dragging his cloak like a toddler throwing a tantrum. Letters delivered, hallway crossed, breath held, another bell. This one comes from the music room. You don't ask why, you simply go. Inside, a group of noble children are attempting to play instruments badly. One has a drum, two are fighting over a lute, and another is vigorously shaking a tambourine as if it owes him money. You're handed a list of items to fetch. More chairs, more paper, a fresh ribbon for the young lady's hair. You nod again and vanish into the hallway, returning minutes later with everything requested, plus a second ribbon, just in case. By the time you leave, your ears are ringing louder than the bells. Another errand follows, then another. Someone needs a gown retrieved from the laundry. Someone else needs hot water for tea, but only if it's steeped precisely 7 seconds. Someone needs the cat removed from the library shelves. Again, apparently, it's nesting in philosophy now. You move through all of it with quiet efficiency, your body in constant motion, your brain quietly screaming into a void lined with velvet and brocade. Eventually, you pass a window near the western tower. Outside, the sun is climbing high. The courtyard glows with midday light. Gardeners move like shadows through the hedges. A fountain bubbles cheerfully, as if it isn't completely useless in winter. Birds flit from ledge to ledge. Somewhere in the distance, someone is laughing, a real laugh, not the strained politeness of the palace. You stare for a moment longer than you should, then you turn away. There are dishes to carry, doors to hold, and opinions to pretend you don't have. Someone hands you a new tray. Someone else tells you to hurry. The bells will keep ringing, and you will keep answering. There are two things you never escape in a palace: footsteps and orders. You're on your 8th errand in what feels like 20 minutes, and your legs have stopped feeling like part of your body. They're just attached now. 2 tired servants beneath you, blindly following muscle memory. If they could file complaints, they would have unionized by now. You're hauling a bundle of fresh linens down a corridor lined with stained glass windows. Beautiful, yes, but not so much when the sun hits them just right and blinds you with the glare of a golden angel's knee. You turn the corner, narrowly avoiding a laundry maid carrying a stack of towels taller than herself. She gives you a brief nod that reads, "If I drop these, we're both doomed." You return the look with one that says, Don't tempt fate. Your destination is one of the smaller guest rooms, used mostly when some distant cousin or minor noble unexpectedly shows up with luggage and expectations. You push open the door with your elbow, only to discover the room is already occupied. Not by a guest, thankfully, just by another servant, trying to fluff the mattress with one hand and rub a stain out of the curtain with the other. She glances at you with wide eyes and mutters, "It wasn't me." You nod. You've used that phrase yourself. Often, you drop the linens on the bed and start helping. The sooner this room looks like it's fit for royalty, the sooner you can disappear from it. You both work in silence, perfectly choreographed. One folds, one tucks, one smooths, one straightens. There's something oddly peaceful about it, like folding chaos into order, one wrinkle at a time. Then the bell rings again, not from the kitchens this time, from upstairs. That bell means the lady of the house is ready for her bath. You both wince. No one wants that assignment, but it's yours. You climb the staircase to the bathing chambers, a copper bucket in each hand, and the quiet despair of someone who knows exactly how many stairs are left. The bath chamber is warm, thankfully, but humid enough to curl your eyebrows. Steam clings to the air like gossip. The lady's maid is already there, snapping commands in every direction. You're instructed to fill the copper tub, light the incense, warm the towels, and this part is always a joy. Test the water without actually touching it. You use the trick. Dip a small spoon in and flick a droplet onto your wrist. Too cold. Another kettle, then. It takes 7 trips to get the water right. Meanwhile, the lady is brushing her hair in the next room, humming a tune that might be pleasant if it weren't coming from someone who once screamed at a servant because her slippers were facing slightly the wrong way. Once the bath is ready, you step aside, invisible again. You back out of the room slowly, the steam fogging your view, and try not to slip on the wet stone floor. You did that once. It echoed through the whole wing. People still talk about it. Back in the corridor, the steward stops you with a raised eyebrow and a parchment scroll. "Errands," he says, handing it over like it's a treasured family heirloom. You glance down. The list is absurd. 3 rooms need more firewood. 2 guests want extra pillows. 1 noblewoman requires a footstool fetched from the north wing. A footstool from across the entire palace. For her feet, you sigh quietly. The kind of sigh that lives in your bones. Then you fold the parchment, tuck it into your apron, and begin. The firewood comes first. You head to the wood store, a dark, dry little room near the lower kitchens that always smells like earth and bark. You load up your arms with logs until they're stacked nearly to your chin. The walk back is a wobble, a slow, creaky, uneven shuffle that makes you feel like a table with one leg shorter than the others. You make it barely. The pillows come next. You fetch them from the linen room, where a mountain of fabric threatens to collapse on anyone who breathes too hard. You grab 2 that aren't too lumpy and march them up to the guest chamber. You knock gently, wait, knock again. Eventually, a voice calls. Leave them, like you're a dog dropping off a bone. You do as you're told. Then, yes, the footstool. It's in the north wing, which might as well be in another country. You pass through 3 courtyards, 2 hidden stairwells, and 1 hallway so narrow you have to turn sideways to get through. You finally find the stool in question. It's lovely, sure, painted wood with embroidered cushions, but light, no. It's heavier than it looks, and determined to bump into every doorframe along the way. By the time you deliver it, your arms are trembling. You set it down with the gentleness of a parent placing a newborn. The noblewoman glances at it, then says nothing, which is actually a win. Back into the corridor, you pause to lean against a wall for 1 second, just one, when a whisper behind you says, "Pissed." You turn. It's Marin, pale-faced, wild-haired, and clearly mid-chaos. "You didn't hear this from me," he whispers, "but there's going to be a surprise inspection. The steward is coming to check all the rooms, even ours." You blink at him. You had plans. You were going to sneak a crust of bread from the kitchens. Maybe sit, briefly, think about breathing. But now you're sprinting back to the servants' quarters to clean everything you own before someone inspects it and decides your blanket is too wrinkled to be respectable. Because in this palace, even your misery has to be tidy. Midday in the palace is a strange hour, too late to be called morning, too early to offer rest. It's the part of the day where everything speeds up and slows down at the same time. The nobles settle into long meals and longer conversations, while the servants enter their second wind, or collapse trying. You're already sweating by the time you reach the Great Hall. Lunch is underway. You weren't assigned to the dining floor, but that doesn't matter. When things go sideways, and they always do, you get pulled in. The head footman grabs your sleeve the moment you pass through the servants' corridor. "We're short. Take this," he says, thrusting a silver tray into your hands with the urgency of a man defusing a bomb. The tray is heavy, covered in goose, glazed vegetables, and a bowl of something unidentifiable that smells like honey and regret. You enter the hall slowly, balancing the tray with arms that have already carried firewood, linens, and a footstool with a superiority complex. You step around the nobles as carefully as you can. They're arranged like artwork, draped in silks and satins, holding goblets with pinkies out, talking about war and poetry and horses they'll never ride. You catch snippets as you pass, and then I said to the Duke, "Simply no good wine this season. Absolutely scandalous." And then laughter, loud, polite, and entirely insincere. The smell of food is maddening. You haven't eaten yet. You won't for a while, maybe not until dusk. Your stomach doesn't even bother growling anymore. It just sulks quietly like a child who knows better than to complain. You set the tray down beside a nobleman who doesn't acknowledge your existence. His ring catches the light as he reaches for a knife. And for a brief second, you wonder how many people had to be forgotten for that ring to be made. Back out you go. Empty tray in hand, another call, another platter, this time wine, then bread, then dessert. Each trip is a ballet of avoidance. Avoiding eye contact, spilled soup, and the noble child who keeps trying to trip people with a fork tied to string. Eventually, the wave ends. The nobles sink into their chairs, bloated and content, while servants sweep in like shadows to clean the battlefield. Plates vanish, crumbs are scraped, goblets collected. One servant accidentally bumps a chair, and the steward gives him a look that could sour milk. You make a note, avoid all furniture when possible, as the nobles drift off to their next round of leisurely pursuits. Reading, lounging, judging, the rest of you begin the cleanup. You head back to the kitchen, arms aching, feet blistered, face flushed from the heat and the stress of serving people who think thank you is a myth. Inside the kitchen, it's chaos again, dishes piled like mountains. Cooks bark orders, even though the meal is technically over. Someone's dropped a bowl of candied nuts, and now the floor is sticky and smells like a pastry's funeral. You're handed a stack of dirty plates and pointed toward the scullery. Ah, the scullery, the place where dreams go to die. It's dark, damp, and always too hot. The air is thick with steam and soap, and the distant sound of someone crying softly over a broken ladle. You stand in front of a massive basin filled with grey water and start scrubbing plates, spoons, goblets, knives. Over and over, the grease clings like guilt. The soap does its best. Your fingers turn into prunes, then raisins, then something entirely new and unpleasant. The scullery maid next to you mutters a joke under her breath. Something about silverware being the real nobility in this palace, since it gets polished more than the people. You laugh or wheeze. It's hard to tell the difference now. At one point, you drop a fork. It clatters to the floor, echoing like thunder. 5 heads snap toward you at once. You pick it up and pretend it never happened. By the time the basin is empty, your back is bent, your hands raw, and you've had at least 2 existential crises. You rinse your arms in a smaller bucket, dry them on your apron, and take a moment to sit on a crate near the rear door. It's not exactly allowed, but no one sees you. Outside, the garden hums with bees and distant chatter. The sun is brighter now, golden and cruel. The kind of light that makes everything look cleaner than it feels. You stare at it for a while, not because it's beautiful, but because it's not yelling at you. Then the bell rings. Again, of course it does. You stand up. Another tray needs delivering. Another cushion needs fluffing. Another chamber pot needs emptying. You are a servant in a palace, built to shine, and your job is to keep it that way, even if you disappear doing it. Somewhere deep in the palace, a bell rings twice in quick succession. Short, sharp, impatient. That's the bell for the upper garden. And not the nice part with the roses and statues. The far end, where the herb wall meets the outer slope, and the nobles go only when they want to pretend they enjoy walking. You're sent there with nothing but a broom and a vague instruction. Tidy it up. You head out through the west corridor, pushing open a heavy door that sticks every time it rains, which is always. The sunlight hits you like a slap. It's the first time you've been fully outside all day, and your eyes need a moment to understand what they're looking at. Blue sky, warm air, bees bumbling lazily between thyme and lavender. It would be peaceful if you weren't here to clean up someone else's mess. The garden's a tangle of elegance and neglect. Ornamental hedges trimmed just well enough to imply they used to be cared for. Flower beds that desperately want to bloom but are clearly rethinking the effort. And walking paths littered with leaves, petals, and, of course, muddy boot prints from a noble's afternoon wander. You begin sweeping. It's a slow process. The stone path is uneven, and every gust of wind undoes your progress. A leaf drifts down mockingly after each pass, like nature's version of sarcasm. You sweep it again. It returns. You consider having a quiet breakdown but decide to save that for after supper. At least the smells are better here. Mint, basil, thyme, actual herbs instead of stale flour and meat drippings. You brush past a rosemary bush, and it releases a scent so calming you forget for a moment that your boots are wet and your socks are officially part of the ecosystem. From your position near the edge of the terrace, you can see part of the valley below. Trees sway lazily in the breeze, fields stretch toward the horizon, and little puffs of smoke curl from the chimney of a nearby cottage far beyond the palace walls. You imagine living there. Small place, quiet life, 1 room, 1 fire. No bells. Then the actual bell rings again. Right, you finish up, gathering the pile of leaves into a basket with more drama than necessary. You leave the broom in the supply shed and head back inside. trading sunshine for shadows, herbs for hearth soot. Back inside, things have shifted. The palace is in afternoon mode now. Nobles have gone to their chambers to nap or gossip, which means the halls are quieter, but not empty. Servants move like shadows, cleaning, carrying, adjusting things that were perfectly fine until someone decided they weren't. You're stopped by the steward's assistant. He gives you a look that suggests he neither knows nor cares who you are, but has a job for you anyway. You'll assist with the wardrobe rotation. What now? He doesn't explain, just points toward the noble wing and walks off at a speed that implies he's never carried anything heavier than a paper. You sigh, mentally rearranging your entire afternoon. The wardrobe rotation is exactly what it sounds like, swapping out a noble's entire seasonal wardrobe for another, fresher, possibly more aggressively feathered one. It means lifting trunks that way as much as livestock, carrying them up narrow stairs, and trying very hard not to wrinkle. A single cuff or tear a lace sleeve worth more than your yearly pay. You meet the lady's maid in question outside the chamber. She hands you gloves, white, thin, useless. You slide them on like a child dressing up for a game and prepare to lift a chest that was clearly designed by someone who hates backs. It takes 2 trips. First, the spring silks go in, then the winter velvets come out. Each garment has to be folded just so, stacked with invisible precision, and scented lightly with rose oil. Not too much, not too little. A balance more delicate than international peace treaties. During the second trip, you accidentally bump your elbow on the carved wardrobe door. The maid gasps like you've kicked a puppy. Careful, she hisses. That door's older than you. You resist the urge to say, and yet I'm more flexible. Instead, you nod. Always nod. By the time the last box is in place and the final lavender sachet tucked neatly into a drawer, your arms are shaking. The gloves are grey. Your face is flushed. The maid barely looks at you as she says, "You may go." You don't argue. You retreat down the corridor, dodging a pair of page boys, chasing each other with sticks that were probably meant to be scepters. You head back to the main hall, just in time for the mid-afternoon check-in. An informal roll call of sorts, where senior staff eyeball the crowd and decide who looks idle enough to be punished with something creatively unpleasant. You do your best to look busy without actually doing anything. It works, almost. You're asked to help reset the receiving chamber for a minor diplomatic visit happening tomorrow morning, which means dragging chairs, rearranging flower vases, and replacing the ceremonial rug that smells like a damp dog with ambitions. At one point, you and another servant are instructed to straighten the chandelier. You nod solemnly, then pretend to know what that means. You stare at it together for 10 minutes before agreeing it probably looks fine. The steward walks by, glances upward, and says nothing. You both take that as the highest praise. Afternoon fades. The light in the hall grows long and golden. Shadows stretch like lazy cats. Somewhere in the garden, a lute starts playing. Not well, but with enthusiasm. Probably one of the nobles who thinks music is a hobby and not a skill. You feel the fatigue in your bones now. Not just tired, but heavied, like your whole body has been filled with sand and expectation. But you're not done yet. Evening is coming, and with it comes the nobles, dressed, demanding, decadent. They'll want food, they'll want wine, they'll want everything, and you'll be there to serve them. Again. Evening in the palace is a performance. Not a quiet winding down like it is for normal people. Not a meal and a candle and maybe a yawn. No, here it's theatre. The nobles emerge from their rooms draped in layers of fabric, that swish and sparkle, perfumed, powdered, polished. Their voices are louder now, their gestures broader. This is their time to be seen, to outshine each other, and to drink too much while pretending not to care. For you, it means chaos. You're in the upper corridor, hands full of candle holders and fresh wax tapers. Because someone's decided the lighting must be warmer tonight. The phrase was accompanied by a hand wave and no further explanation. So now you're replacing every candle in the drawing room before guests arrive. You move quickly, gently, carefully. The last thing you need is to knock one of the polished silver holders off the mantel. Again. It took 3 people and a prayer to buff out that dent. Last time, when the candles are lit, the whole room changes. Golden light flickers over the velvet chairs, dances across the polished floor, and turns the noble women's jewelry into small constellations. But you're already gone before they enter. Your next stop, the servants' pantry. The head footman is assembling the evening staff, assigning positions for the meal service. His voice is clipped, efficient, and just slightly terrifying. You're assigned to wine duty. Perfect, the wine service is a minefield. The nobles know their vintages like priests know verses. One wrong bottle, one cork popped at the wrong moment, and you'll hear about it for weeks. Possibly in Latin. You follow the line of servers to the dining hall. It's been transformed again. New flowers, new arrangement, a new seating chart that will absolutely cause at least one argument halfway through the meal. You stand at attention with your tray of goblets, pretending your arms aren't already jelly and that you weren't scrubbing flagstones 4 hours ago. The doors open. They file in. Silk, velvet, brocade. Laughter that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Perfume thick enough to qualify as a fog. Nobles take their seats with the studied grace of people who've never had to carry their own chair. Dinner begins. You move like a ghost, refilling goblets, fetching more bread, replacing dropped napkins with quiet precision. The goal is to be invisible, helpful but unseen, present but unnoticed. You overhear everything. Someone is boasting about a new hunting falcon. Another complains about the price of saffron. A young lord launches into a story about a duel that may or may not have happened. A lady nods politely, then rolls her eyes when he's not looking. And then, the drama, a noble woman discovers a hair in her soup. Everyone pauses. You hold your breath. The head cook is summoned, grovels, and is dismissed with a hand wave. You get the feeling that the hair wasn't the problem. It was just time for a spectacle. The rest of the meal continues. You keep moving. Someone wants more wine, then less wine, then a different wine. You fetch them all. You smile when needed. You apologize when not at fault. Eventually, dessert arrives. Honey cakes and glazed fruit arranged like architecture. The nobles clap. One of them even compliments the arrangement. You wonder if the cook will cry when he hears. Then the music begins. Minstrels in the corner strike up something soft and string-heavy. A few guests start to sway. One noble stands and offers his hand to a lady in red. She pretends to hesitate, then takes it with a flourish that suggests this was pre-planned hours ago. The dancing begins. You and the others step back, lining the edges of the room like furniture with opinions. You watch feet move in practiced patterns, dresses spin, sleeves flutter, laughter rises again. You know what comes next. Someone's going to spill something. You wait, it happens. A young lord, barely out of boyhood, spins too fast, trips on his own sleeve, and knocks over a goblet of wine. It soaks the hem of a noblewoman's gown, gasps, blame, fluster, apologies delivered too quickly to be sincere. You move in with a cloth before anyone can point. Dab, don't rub. Always dab. Crisis averted. Applause for the music continues. No applause for you, but your cloth is now the real hero of the evening. Eventually, the dancing ends. The minstrels bow. The guests yawn, theatrically, as though exhaustion is something they've earned. The nobles drift toward the smoking room. The ladies retire to the parlors. One child is carried out under one arm, fast asleep and still wearing a crown made of bread crusts. No one says a word. And you head back to the dining hall to begin cleanup. The plates are stacked high. The floor is coated in crumbs, wax, and the shattered remains of a wine glass someone stepped on and never admitted to breaking. You sweep, you scrub. You carry trays back to the kitchen, where the scullery maids have started round 2 of what will be a long night with hot water and cold curses. It's late now, the moon is high, the palace quieter, the nobles are done being fabulous, but still, have work to do. The palace doesn't sleep. It dozes, it sighs. It rolls over and demands fresh sheets. You've finished in the dining hall, swept, wiped, stacked, and just as you begin entertaining dangerous thoughts of sitting down, another voice calls your name. It's the steward's assistant again, a man who could wrinkle a linen sheet just by looking at it. The west chambers need tending, he says. The ladies are changing for the evening. You know what that means. Wardrobe duty. Again, you shuffle toward the noble wing, dragging your tired limbs past torches that flicker like they know what you're about to walk into. The West Wing dressing chamber is a place of silk, sighs, and slowly mounting hysteria. You're barely through the door when a silk stocking is thrown at your head. Not that one, someone snaps. The ivory, not the egg cream. 2 ladies in waiting scurry past you with armfuls of lace. A noblewoman is mid-meltdown about the way her sleeves fall on her elbows, while another insists she's been given last season's brooch and might perish from the indignity. You are handed a box of pins. Someone else gives you a corset to tighten. You pull, gently, firmly. The noblewoman gasps, like she's just remembered how to breathe in syllables. There, she says dramatically, now I can tolerate this dinner. You nod. It's unclear whether she's speaking to you or to her reflection. A lady gestures to you with 2 fingers. She needs her gown lifted slightly while she steps into embroidered shoes. You kneel, gently gathering the hem, fingers brushing soft velvet worth more than your entire family. She doesn't look down, just steps in, 1 foot after the other, as though gravity itself is beneath her notice. She says nothing, but her perfume says everything. It's sweet, strong, and refuses to leave your nose for the rest of the evening. You back away and vanish, like a curtain pulled aside, then forgotten. In the hallway you exhale deeply. Even the air out here smells richer. Fewer candles, fewer complaints. You pass another servant, carrying a silver mirror larger than himself. He whispers, "Don't ask," and you don't. Next, you're sent to check the evening chambers. Fires must be stoked, beds turned down, and everything arranged just so. Slippers beside the rug, water jug filled, curtains drawn just the right distance from the window. You know the rhythm by now. In one room, the hearth has nearly gone out. You kneel, again, poke the coals, add fresh wood, and whisper encouragement to the flame like it's a nervous performer backstage. It catches, barely. The bed has 4 pillows, each needing to be fluffed with exactly 3 pats. No more, no less. Too firm, and they'll accuse you of sabotage. Too soft, and you'll be blamed for a ruined neck. You pull the blanket back halfway, fold it neatly, then step back to observe. It looks fine. You adjust one corner just in case. In another chamber, you find someone already asleep. A nobleman sprawled across the bed, boots on, cloak still draped across one arm. A goblet sits half full on the side table. He snores with the confidence of a man who's never once changed his own bedding. You step in, quietly retrieve the goblet, and straighten the curtains without waking him. The candle near the bed sputters. You blow it out. The room darkens, and you step out quietly into the corridor, where your shadow feels louder than your footsteps, down in the servants' wing. Preparations for nightfall are in full swing. Clean linens are being folded. The last trays are being cleared from the halls. Someone is muttering to themselves as they scrub the floors near the stairwell, either prayer or vengeance, possibly both. You're pulled into a final duty for the night, distributing chamber pots. Yes, chamber pots. The glamour of palace life continues. You collect one from the washroom, clean, warm from being dried near the oven, and carry it carefully down the corridor to the guest suite. The guest is not in. You thank the universe for small mercies. The pot goes beneath the bed, nestled beside a decorative footstool with lion's paws carved into the legs. You wonder if the lion would approve. Another pot, another room, repeat. At least this part is quiet, and then your final stop. The candle rounds, you, a small lantern, and a long iron snuffer. You walk through the upper galleries, gently extinguishing candles, one by one. The flames hiss out, little by little, and the darkness grows. You start to feel it, the quiet. The palace is finally still. Outside the windows, the night settles in fully. Stars scatter across the sky, and the moon peers through the glass like it's checking in on the servants who made it this far. You snuff the last candle, close the snuffer's latch, and let your shoulders sag. Done. Finally, don the servant stairs. Back to the quarters, each step heavier than the last. You pass no one. Just the whisper of old stone and the distant creak of a rafter settling in the corridor outside the sleeping hall. You pause, not because you're unsure where to go, but because it feels strange to be finished, strange to be still. You breathe in through your nose, and the air smells like wax and smoke and clean laundry. Almost like peace, almost. The door to the servants' hall groans open, and for the first time all day, no one is shouting. It's dim inside. A single lantern swings from a low rafter, casting golden ripples across the room like it's trying to soothe the walls. The air smells of old wood, worn wool, and the faintest hint of soap. Somebody probably used too much on the floor again. A few of the other servants are already here, scattered across their straw pallets like forgotten laundry. You step inside, and the door closes behind you with a sigh. It feels final. Your corner is exactly as you left it this morning. A thin straw mattress tucked between 2 beams. A folded blanket that's still slightly damp from yesterday's mist. And a wooden box that holds everything you own, which is, to be specific, 1 comb with 3 teeth missing, a ribbon that used to be red, and a pair of socks that dream of being whole again. You lower yourself onto the mattress with a noise that's somewhere between a groan and a prayer. Your knees thank you. Your feet throw a party. Your back mutters something about betrayal and goes on strike. Across the room, Marin is lying flat on his back, arms spread out like he's expecting to float away. "Did we live?" he mumbles toward the ceiling. "Barely," someone replies from beneath a blanket that's doing a terrible job of hiding a pair of boots. There's soft laughter, the kind that doesn't need to be loud because it understands you're all too tired to enjoy it properly. You shift onto your side, curling into the straw with a sigh that empties your chest of the entire day. Every step, every tray, every brushstroke, every bell, it all slides off you like mud in the rain. Someone starts snoring. Someone else mutters something in their sleep, probably still talking to a noble in their dreams, or arguing with a goose. You never know anymore. A rat skitters across a beam above. No one flinches. You all signed the unspoken truce long ago. Don't bother us, we won't bother you. You pull the blanket up around your shoulders and rest your head on the folded edge of your sleeve. Your pillow is a luxury you haven't earned yet. Maybe next winter. The room is quiet now. The fire in the little hearth at the end of the hall crackles softly, low and tired, like it too has had a long day. The warmth barely reaches your feet, but it's enough to keep the night from biting. For a moment, you just listen to the breath of sleeping bodies, to the wood shifting, to the silence between the walls. This is your space, not grand, not comfortable, but yours. Tomorrow, it all begins again. The bells, the trays, the whispers, the weight. But not yet. Right now, you are horizontal. You are off duty. You are a servant, yes, but a sleeping one, and that is sacred. You're nearly asleep when the footsteps begin again. Soft, careful ones, moving past the door like they don't want to wake the building. You crack one eye open, just to check. It's Lysa, the baker's assistant. She's carrying a tray of dough for tomorrow's first loaf, off to the warming alcove near the kitchens. She nods as she passes, and you nod back, barely lifting your head. A quiet exchange between two people who understand. Rest is relative, and duty is eternal. You roll back over, the blanket tugging at your shoulder. But sleep is shy tonight. Your body is still, your mind, not yet. Memories of the day flicker across your thoughts, like pages in a wind-blown book, carrying water, lighting fires. The look on the steward's face when you were 2 seconds late. The satisfaction of a bed perfectly made. The ache in your legs from hauling linens up for flights of stairs. The sound of laughter echoing down the noble halls, none of it yours. You shift slightly. The straw beneath you crackles like dry leaves. You adjust the blanket, hoping it might decide to be longer. Marin stirs nearby and mumbles something about chickens. Again, he has dreams. Apparently, most of them involve poultry revolts. From somewhere down the hall, a bell chimes softly. Not a call to service, just the old iron clock in the watchtower, marking the hour. You count the rings, 8, not late. But in servant time, it's the edge of night. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake the others, and slip on your outer tunic. It's a little stiff from drying near the fire last night, but you don't have the energy to care. There's one last task, the final ritual before the day can truly end. You reach for the broom, leaning beside the doorway, the one no one's assigned but everyone takes turns using anyway. It's for the hallway outside. Just a sweep, just a minute. A small attempt to leave the palace cleaner than you found it. You step into the corridor. The torches are dim now, just glowing coals tucked into the wall brackets. The stone beneath your feet is cool, smooth from centuries of footsteps. Yours now join the 1,000 others. You sweep slowly, rhythmically. Dust, straw. A few leaves that somehow always find their way inside. The broom's soft bristles whisper across the floor. The sound is gentle, comforting, like brushing crumbs off a table before setting it for guests. As you work, your mind softens. The edges of your thoughts blur. Everything begins to feel quieter. You pause at the end of the corridor, broom in hand, and look out through a narrow window slit. The stars are out now, bright and sharp. The sky stretches wide and still, unbothered by titles or chores or boots that don't fit. For a moment, you feel small, but not in the bad way. In the honest way, a human, in a palace, under a sky that has no idea what a chamber pot is. You turn back, one last sweep. One last pat of your hands on your apron. One last quiet breath, then back inside. The door creaks closed behind you. The sleeping hall welcomes you again with soft breaths and the warmth of tired bodies sharing one room. You lie down, this time properly. You shift once, then again, then stillness. Your eyes close, your breath slows. The ache in your bones fades into something like weightlessness, and above you, the footsteps of nobles echo faintly across the upper floor, pacing their private chambers. As unaware of your day as you are of their dreams, you fall asleep to the sound of shoes you'll never wear, on floors you'll never own. But here, now, in this moment, you are still, and that is enough. The morning bells haven't rung yet, but you're awake, not fully, just enough to know that sleep is slowly slipping out from under you like a blanket pulled by a cruel older sibling. Your body is heavy, stuck between dreams and the day. You're curled into yourself, blanket wrapped around you like a shield that's losing the battle against the cold creeping into your toes. It's still dark, that inky, velvet kind of dark that makes you wonder if time has stopped entirely. The air is still, thick with the soft sounds of other servants' sleeping quiet breaths. The occasional snore, the creak of a wooden beam settling with a grunt. You don't move, not yet. Movement means commitment, means the start of another day, means aches returning, boots being pulled on with groans, and sleeves that somehow got damp again overnight. But lying here won't stop it. The palace wakes whether you do or not. So, eventually, you sit up. Slowly, your spine crackles in protest. As if it too would rather stay horizontal. You rub your eyes, which feel like they've been sanded down with linen. You stretch your legs. One knee pops, the other sighs, across the room. Someone coughs themselves awake, a soft rustle of blankets, a whispered curse at the morning. You stand and begin folding your blanket, because that's what you do every morning. Without question, routine is the one thing you have here that belongs to you. Your tunic is still where you left it, crumpled at the foot of your pallet. You shake it out, put it on, and cinch the belt just tight enough to remind you that yes, you are in fact a physical being in a physical world with physical responsibilities today. There will be more fires, more trays, more whispered insults disguised as compliments, more tasks passed down by people who wouldn't last a single day doing them. But also, there will be stolen glances out of high windows, warm pockets of air near the kitchen hearth, the quiet satisfaction of a job done well, even if no one sees it. There will be moments, small and sharp, where you will remember who you are, even in a place that does everything it can to make you forget. You step out into the corridor. The air is cold and dry, and your breath clouds in front of your face like a question. No bell yet, just silence, the briefest slice of peace, and in that silence, your footsteps begin again. because the palace needs waking, and it needs you to do it. Now. The palace fades behind you. The corridors soften. The noise dissolves. The weight of the day lifts gently from your shoulders, like a blanket pulled off just before dawn. You are no longer carrying trays. You are no longer running to the sound of bells. You are lying still, somewhere quiet, somewhere warm, somewhere that doesn't ask anything of you anymore. Breathe in, slowly. Let the air fill you, steady and full. Then let it go. The fires you lit are still glowing. The footsteps above have quieted. The nobles are asleep, and now, so are you. The stone floors are far away. The chores are distant. The names, the titles, the commands, they've all slipped out into the dark and left you alone with peace. You are not a servant now. You are resting. Let the stillness hold you. Let the quiet wrap around you like a thick wool blanket warmed by time. There is no task waiting, no door to answer, no tray to carry. Only rest, only sleep, only the sound of your own breath. Drifting slowly through the night, sweet dreams and good night.